It's interesting. I had a live webinar on LinkedIn last year, and it was called Your Product Won't Sell Itself. And one of the things in my research for this webinar that I really wanted to understand was why most companies fail. And they mostly fail. Certainly, they run out of money. And this is, startup to series A, B sort of trajectory.
Okay.
But most of them don't do the due diligence from a research standpoint, industry research, jobs to be done, competitive analysis, customer interviews, all these sort of things to ultimately set the product up or solution, so that you can get to a good understanding of where you can position it. Provide us your POV on that statement and really what entrepreneurs today need to be taken into consideration when it comes to this sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it's a great point you make. It's a very good question. I haven't thought about it in quite that way before. First of all, let's just stand back and say any company at any size and at any point in their life cycle can proactively, or in sometimes it ends up happening reactively, can end up wanting and needing to think about category.
Right.
And where positioning itself is always, whether it's, category is just sort of a bigger look at positioning, but you're always thinking about your positioning. If we think only about very young companies, the startups and
Right.
the early entrepreneurial phases of, it can be of a whole company. It can also, frankly, be of a new product inside a big company.
Absolutely.
Right. So
IBM and Watson. I mean,
right.
Look at where we are today with that.
Yeah. And again, one of the things that comes back to is if you're doing something that is sort of brand new and hasn't quite been, if you're just following a pattern, like there's already a market underway, and you are trying to play catch up, you're a fast follower or a slow follower, whatever, then all you have to do is copy what's out there. So yes, you need to research and all of that, but it's pretty apparent. And maybe you're looking to differentiate, maybe you're not, maybe you're just looking to get into the game. Okay, fine. But a lot of new companies get started because they're trying to solve a problem that isn't being well solved yet.
Right.
Or they're trying to hit an intersection of things where, there's great solutions in 1, 2, 3 elements, but there's nothing that brings it together in a holistic way. Or they break things apart. If you go back to what kind of created the early surge in the tech industry, it was a company like Microsoft, Bill, taking a monolithic system, a mainframe, and saying, I'm just going to offer just the operating system. And we're going to break these big things apart, and we're going to start, okay, you can buy the database separate from the operating system. So, and these are pendulums that swing. Sometimes you're bringing things together. The iPhone brought 3 things together. Sometimes you're taking things apart. Sometimes you're just going for white. I'm going for some white space that kind of doesn't, it's everywhere, but nobody kind of solves the problem holistically the way I want to try to solve it. So when you're doing that, everything you say is 100% correct. You have to do research. You have to understand what's out there. But 3 things make that really hard. When you're a young company, you don't have manpower,
right,
people to go, spend a ton of time or money on this research. So you have to do some, but you don't have a lot. You also have to get something going. Secondly, there's probably nothing that looks exactly like what you want it to look like. I can look out into the gaming industry, and I can look into the app industry, and I can look into the personal development, and I can look into the professional development, but there's nobody bringing those things together in the way I want to bring them together. So what do I look at? I can look at each of them, but I can't copy anything because this has been what's hard for us the last year. We've had to invent a whole new formula, and it's really difficult. But then also everything's moving so fast. So I can do all the research in the world. And I did a ton of research 2 years ago when I started. Well, 3 months later, that's different. And 6 months later, that's different. And a year later, generative comes along. And so, in a perfect world, when you start a company, you have unlimited time, unlimited resource, unlimited money, and you can really do things perfectly. And you hope that all of the laws of physics that impact every other company aren't going to impact you.
Right.
But that's not the world we live in. Like,
No.
all of these laws of physics impact all of us. And so you can't, there's no such thing as creating the perfect company or the perfect solution or the perfect, like, let's start out and really know what we're going to do, because the minute the real world interferes, everything changes anyway.
Yeah, it really does.